Mr. President, 302,000. 302,000. That's how many migrant U.S. Customs and Border Protection is reported to have encountered at our southern border in the month of December. 1 month, 302,000. Now, to put that number in perspective, 302,000 is equivalent to roughly a third of the population of my home state of South Dakota, or almost half of the population of Vermont, or more than half, I should say, of the population of Wyoming. And that's just 1 month of encounters. 1 month. Just when you think the Biden border crisis can't get any worse, it gets worse. Mr. President, the situation at our southern border is unsustainable. We've had 3 successive record-breaking years of illegal immigration at the southern border under President Biden. And if the current trend continues, we're well on our way to a 4th. The Border Patrol is stretched thin. Border towns are stretched thin. And other major U.S. cities are struggling to deal with an influx of migrants. Take New York City, for example. New York City is currently facing cuts to city services, including a massive 13.5% cut to its police force as a result of the migrant crisis. And while the practical challenges posed by this immigration crisis are massive, even more worrisome are the national security challenges. Our country cannot be secure while we have hundreds of thousands of migrants flooding across our southern border each month, frequently to end up released into the United States with court dates years into the future. And even more concerning are those who are making their way into our country without being apprehended. Since October 1st alone, there have been more than 83,000 known gotaways at our southern border. And those are individuals that the Border Patrol saw but was unable to apprehend. That's 83,000 individuals making their way into our country without our having the slightest idea of who they are, what they're doing here, or where in the United States they're planning to travel. 83,000. And while some of them may simply be in search of a better life, others may be dangerous individuals who should not be entering our country. And let's be very clear, Mr. President, there are dangerous individuals who are trying to make their way into our country. Between October and November alone, the Border Patrol arrested 30 individuals on the terrorist watch list attempting to make their way across our southern border. Fiscal year 2023 saw 169 individuals on the terrorist watch list arrested at our southern border. 169. A substantial increase, I might add, over fiscal year 2022, which was itself a substantial increase over fiscal year 2021. And that's not a good trajectory, Mr. President. And again, I point out, these numbers only refer to the individuals the Border Patrol actually apprehended. There were 670,000 known gotaways during fiscal year 2023. How many of them were terrorists, criminals, or other dangerous individuals? The fact of the matter is, we don't know. And that's disturbing. This is insanity. 169 that they caught on the terrorist watch list trying to come across our southern border, 670,000 last year who came across the southern border that got away. We have no idea the composition of those people or how many of them. I suspect that most people who are trying to get in here that are terrorists or some other type of involved in some other type of criminal enterprise probably figure out a way to get in here and not get caught. There may be quite a few of those on the got-away list. What we know, Mr. President, however, is that we must regain operational control of the southern border, and it has to happen now. And since President Biden has failed to do so, and since his policies have encouraged illegal immigration, Congress is going to have to act. We must act. I'm pleased that Democrats have finally come to the table in a real way to discuss needed reforms. But I want to say again that the only acceptable reforms are reforms that will actually meet the challenge at our southern border. Republicans will not sign off on cosmetic measures or superficial tweaks or simply just throwing more money at the problem. We owe the American people a secure border, and will not agree to anything less than real reforms. And Mr. President, I've said this before, I've said it many times. We are a nation of immigrants. I'm one generation removed. My grandfather came here as an immigrant. And yet we're a nation of laws. First and foremost, it's fundamental. It is the foundation, it is the bedrock principle that distinguishes our country from so many other countries around the world. We have laws and they have to be followed. And when people come to this country, and we're a welcoming country, they need to follow the law. So fixing the problem, Mr. President, means not just additional funding for border security measures and enforcement personnel, but a meaningful reform of our asylum and parole systems, which have been abused under the Biden administration. A recent CBS News article noted, and I quote, "Over the past few years, the U.S. asylum system has become a proxy process for migrants to stay and work in America, irrespective of whether they have valid claims or not," end quote. That is not acceptable. Our asylum system is meant to be a refuge for those who face genuine danger from persecution. It is not meant to serve as temporary de facto amnesty for those who simply would prefer to live in the United States. And our parole system is being abused as well. The Biden Department of Homeland Security's overly permissive application of parole has allowed hundreds of thousands of individuals who've not been granted legal status and who may not have a case for remaining in the United States to take up residence in our country, once again providing de facto amnesty, even if temporary. The Biden administration's abuse of our asylum and parole systems has to be reined in if we hope to stem the tide of individuals flooding into the country. And so any acceptable border security reform must include reform of these systems. Mr. President, while it may have taken them a long time to get here, I am, as I said, encouraged that at least Democrats have finally come to the table. And I hope, for the sake of our country, that sooner rather than later, we will arrive at an agreement. We've had 3 years of the Biden border crisis. Let's make sure we don't have a fourth. Mr. President, I yield the floor.